blow that up. This is one of the things that were pointed out by the engineer on the parking garage and a needed repair. So that's infiltration of water from the top deck of the parking garage, which has caused some concrete damage there. I believe that's part of the ramp issue. That's a ceiling in the bottom level of the parking garage, I believe. That'll be the ceiling of the second level of parking garage. That's the very top of the ramp going into the parking garage off of Main Street. As you enter the parking garage, that's to the right is the ramp coming up into that. Same thing, just a second picture of it. That's the underneath side of the parking garage. Sorry, you have to do each separately, aren't you? Okay. Same thing, the ramp to the parking garage in another area. These are all different areas. Parking garage below the railing, where the railing attaches to the parking garage, and underneath where that fence is, there's dumpsters underneath there. You can see the rust from the railing there. All that will need redone. Again, above that, you can see where there's water infiltration there. That's in the ramp again. That's one of the columns that they identified that needed addressed. Again, the bottom side of the ramp, more railing damage there. That's, of course, the top deck of the parking garage. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the roof of the Start Bank building. We're over on the main building now. We went through those buildings along with many other buildings, but they are proposing that there could be some repairs done to that, but it's quite costly if that is completely repaired, but we're leaning toward that needing done, and that's part of this $1.2 million request for appropriation. I don't want to give individual estimates out yet because some of them came in high enough that they're over the threshold where we would have to get additional bids. So, well, all of it on the Start Bank building would be. But it's not gone out for bid on all that concrete work. This is just, this would be the roofing, and we would be required to get 2 other bids, and we wouldn't want to give that number publicly until those others come in, so the vendors wouldn't be watching the video and come in with a bid that's right next to the others. So this is the historical chapel at the youth center. That is the basement area. One photo you can go through. There's another photo of the basement area. You can see the plaster down there about midway, the windows down. All has to be addressed. Of course, the paint on the entire basement of the building. And more basement pictures. The only thing that's being used for down there right now is storage of stuff that it should be in a dumpster, but in my opinion. Again, that was a channel that runs up through the wall in one of the restrooms. You can move forward. Okay, here's the historical chapel built in 1924. All those columns would be required to be sanded and painted. The gable top, all that dental work would have to be redone. There's a side view, the same thing. All those windows need redone. Everything is in salvageable condition, and I would say decent condition, but needs addressed because there's a lot of paint that does not remain on those areas, which you'll lose those if they continue to be exposed to the weather. It's just additional pictures. That is the sanctuary part of the chapel. The mural in there, in case you're wondering, is from the 1970s orphanage home that was there before they built the new complex. You can see up right behind that fan and to the left of that fan, damage from a needed roof on that building. That's minor damage in there, but if it's not addressed and not doesn't become watertight, will become a real issue. And unfortunately, I made the comment earlier today, there's about 3 items in the county that we know of that we have that's historical. One is this chapel, one is the bell that's on top of the building, and one is a desk in my office that came from the old courthouse. So we want to do the best we can to preserve these historical items. There is an archway, you can flip on through. So that whole chapel area would need repainted. Also, that's the landing outside the chapel area. And then there's a 3rd floor that the maintenance crew would be capable of taking care of. And I think we're already planning on getting that done. That's another basement photo. Going back around, that same thing. All plaster works. It's all. So I wanted to show you these photos to show you how important it was that we take care of these before it goes any longer. The chapel area, like I said, we're getting some more quotes, but we had requested that $1.2 million. And if I itemize all these items, and we were to put a new roof on the Star Bank building instead of a repair, that would come to 1.258 million based on what we have today in our hands, and awaiting additional quotes in competition of what we have. So I don't know.
Does that 1.25 million estimate include the professional services here, or are those just the repairs?
It does not. We've had to pay some professional service costs out of the maintenance budget, and we tabled the whole thing last month, so we weren't able to get any of that, but do need some professional service. We believe all these should be capital project items. I'll just read through them real quick again. You got most of it there. You got the historical Brandenburg Chapel, roof and paint, preservation of the entire chapel, including the basement of the Star Bank building, issues with the concrete in the parking garage and ramp area, including roof work that needs done there. You have the repairs that's been made at MCCC, which has had to come out of the maintenance budget right now, but should be part of this whole capital repair thing. You also have the clock tower in that figure, and without any professional service work, it's 1.258. So, that fund, depending on interest rates, unfortunately, and if it's anything like my retirement fund was the last quarter, and I'm not real happy about that, but it would depend on we were banking on about $3 million or so going into that fund this year. It depends on interest rates and what they do, whether or not that fund would actually have that kind of money. And then we would have to prioritize what we would do based on that. Right now, it's looking okay still, but you don't know 6 months from now. So that's really all I have. Just a recap of last month. I wanted to show you some photos and see if you would possibly consider. I'd like to be able to say here are our quotes, but we're waiting on, I know, at least one more roofer, one more painter, and the parking garage has not went out for quote yet. That number will be big enough, far big enough, that it'll have to go out for a whole bidding process. But we do have estimates from the engineer that done the analysis on it and what he thinks it might be. So that's all I have, and unless someone has questions for me.
Curiosity, Rick, have you guys looked at grants at all for the chapel for the historical aspect of it?
We do have a small grant that's available, a very small grant. And talked to Olivia about reaching out to prior donors in that. There's only about $5,800, $5,801 and change in that. It's not a grant, but it's a Madison County Community Foundation holds that grant donation over the years. There's only that little amount left. That could be part, actually, that could help us with that little bit that we're over. I would like to kind of fire that up on and try to reach out to, with the other commissioners' help, to people that might want to donate toward that also. It's very important that we get a roof on that and keep the water infiltration out to preserve that building.
Do you have a sense of is there a use with it at this point, or like is what would be the plan?
Yeah,
for
we're working on that. We have some ideas, nothing written in stone yet, but we do have some ideas for use of that building. We don't know how that's going to play out yet, but even if we don't have its preservation of the only historical building Madison County has left, somebody in some kind of odd wisdom in the 70s tore down a 1800s courthouse that it's a shame it's not sitting here today. That's what we do have, and we'd like to preserve it.
Questions?
Is there public comment?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Councilor Likens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Steele.
Roll call, please. Are we gonna have discussion?
I'm sorry?
Discussion.
Yeah. Time for discussion.
Thank you for your time.
I know that we still are in a little bit of a quandary about these funds. Yes, I would like you to speak to that.
Yeah, from here or from here?
Actually, if you could speak up, it might be a little easier to hear, Bob. Thank you.
So, the county commissioner's attorney, Mr. Graham, and I have both researched the issue thoroughly and have traded memos back and forth. It is their position that the commissioners, through the Board of Finance, have the authority to go ahead and collect the interest through the ordinance that they adopted and place it into the capital improvement fund. My reading of the statutes is a little bit different in that the interest that is received from those investments should first be placed in county general and then you appropriate it. I'm not going to speak to anything about what your decision is in terms of whether or not you would appropriate it or would not. But it's essentially the difference between Mr. Graham's and my interpretation is strictly that. It's an interpretation of the statutes. And it all centers around a phrase, investment authority. Because the statute says that the investment authority shall oversee which general fund it goes into. My thought is the investment authority is the county. It's clearly public funds, county funds that are being invested that you're earning interest on. Mr. Graham's is a perfectly plausible reading also that he's saying the investment authority is the Board of Finance and the commissioners. Again, the Board of Finance is made up of 3 commissioners and the county treasurer. Unfortunately, when the legislature adopted these statutes, they did not define what an investment authority was. So it's perfectly plausible that it could be, it was the legislative intent that it be the Board of Finance and the commissioners. It's also very plausible that it could have been the county as a whole, which would be the commissioners and council acting together. Again, the legislature didn't tell us what an investment authority was, and there's no case law on it. And there's been some movement, as I understand it, from recent commissioner conferences that it has been suggested that the commissioners have authority over this, but again, we just don't know for sure. There's no definitive answer. Mr. Graham and I did talk about possibly receiving an opinion from the State Board of Accounts or DLGF, but in both of our experiences, they usually just say consult your attorneys, which kind of puts us right back where we were. Mr. Graham and I suggested that it would be prudent, I believe, that the commissioners and the council have some further discussions about a compromise that wouldn't result in a stalemate between how this is funded. That it's some percentage going forward or whatever you and the commissioners think is most appropriate. But I don't want to speak for Mr. Graham, but I think he thought that was a good idea too.
So my question, one question that brings to mind is, obviously this is something new.
It is.
And generally, in order to have an opinion on it, a lot of times a judge will decide on that interpretation. I've been advised that like a declaratory judgment would be something that we could file for the court to make a determination on that. Is that right?
You could, but litigation is always fraught with issues and expenses.
Right.
Again, I think it might at least be interesting to see whether or not the State Board of Accounts was willing to give an opinion on it. That would give us here, as well as other counties that I'm sure are going through the same questions, some direction going forward. We just don't know that yet. This issue has just bubbled up very recently, and certainly Rick and the commissioners need to move forward with some of these projects fairly soon. So I think in the short term, even if you do choose to seek a declaratory judgment, that process takes a while. By the time you research it and draft it and it gets answered, and it's at least a 6-month process. And so I would think it would behoove you in the short term to have some continued discussions with the commissioners to try and reach some accommodation in the near future.
And I'm not opposed to that at all. I just know that with statute generally it has to be a judge that makes a determination to make a point of how it's interpreted.
Generally, that's true. Yes, generally. But I think, again, if the State Board of Accounts or DLGF would be willing to go out on a limb and make some determination for all counties going forward, or perhaps maybe the Attorney General's office would be in an opinion.
So I guess I just want to know where we go from here. I know we've had conversations. I know you've reviewed things, and I'm not opposed to sitting down with the commissioners. As far as the DLGF and those people, those different organizations, is that something that we need to proceed forward with, or is that something you'll take care of for us?
Yeah, well, both. I think it would be helpful if Mr. Graham and I kind of joined forces and said we would like an opinion on this one way or the other. And certainly we may need you to sign off on it, as well as the commissioners. And if we do seek an Attorney General opinion, it would probably have to come from you and or the commissioners. But it doesn't need to be adversarial. We just want an answer on what's the proper procedure.
Right.
So in the meantime, with these requests, I know since they've been tabled and they need to go forward or else they're going to lose some of their bids, momentum, and repairs. Until we get that worked out, would approving this, that doesn't change?
It's not going to change.
Correct. So in essence, we're just approving
You're approving
an appropriation
that
is from the interest from the general fund.
Correct.
Yeah, oh, right,
correct. And moving forward, once we get a decision or some guidance, one way or the other, whether it's State Board of Accounts or the AG or whoever,